we're going to start off with just a quick report back from each of the workshops. The first workshop is Access to Finance, and we want to talk here a little bit. I think you were talking about startup funding, but the more problematic issue of scale-up funding. And to report back on that, I'm delighted to have Olivier Mallet from the French Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. Olivier, what did you talk about?
Hello. I will speak in French because I represent the French Ministry. So gear up if you need to. Donc nous avons eu un workshop extrêmement intéressant autour de la problématique du financement des scale-up, qui a été structuré d'abord sur un partage des constats, sur ce qui existe, sur les tendances et sur les difficultés. Et puis après, les participants ont aussi eu l'occasion de présenter un petit peu des idées sur ce que l'on pouvait faire, les acteurs privés, les États, la Commission européenne, ce qui était déjà en route, et puis peut-être des indications sur l'avenir. D'abord, au niveau des constats, il y a une tendance relativement positive en fait, dans les dernières années au niveau de la création des startups. On voit que les États performent mieux que par le passé au niveau de l'innovation. On voit que l'investissement, surtout dans les premières phases, aussi est en augmentation en Europe. On commence à être compétitif par rapport aux autres grands États au niveau mondial. Il y a aussi des outils qui se développent un peu partout en Europe. Il y a eu l'exemple français qui a été présenté avec le plan Deep Tech qui a pour ambition d'aboutir à la création de 500 startups Deep Tech d'ici quelques années en France, et on est a priori en bonne voie pour réussir cela. Au niveau européen, on en a déjà parlé plusieurs fois depuis hier matin, mais il y a aussi le Conseil européen de l'innovation qui joue aussi ce rôle d'accompagnement des startups et qui aide aussi au financement. L'EIC, c'est un outil qui existe depuis un petit peu plus de 2 ans et demi maintenant, et on voit qu'il est aussi très efficace pour attirer des capitaux privés. C'est aussi le sens de l'intervention publique, c'est aussi de pouvoir finalement inciter les acteurs privés à se mobiliser et à financer les startups dans des phases très risquées et aussi sur un temps long. Il y a ces constats qui sont relativement positifs, mais à côté de ça, il y a aussi une persistance d'un certain nombre de points plus négatifs, et en particulier sur les difficultés à financer le scale-up. Donc c'est ce qu'on appelle le scale-up gap. Ça se matérialise comment? Ça se matérialise d'abord par un manque de financement disponible pour les entreprises qui souhaitent lever des tickets plus importants. On parle de dizaines ou des centaines de millions d'euros. Quand ces entreprises, elles réussissent, elles mettent plus longtemps à acquérir ces financements, donc elles grossissent moins rapidement que leurs concurrentes hors Europe. Et dans un monde qui est extrêmement compétitif, c'est un problème. Et puis souvent, quand elles arrivent à lever de l'argent, elles lèvent de l'argent qui vient d'ailleurs qu'en Europe. Et en fait, on a parlé de ce problème, c'est qu'il risque d'avoir un effet un peu que l'Europe soit une sorte de maternité pour les startups, et qu'en fait, dès qu'elles sont suffisamment grandes, elles se font racheter, et donc la valeur, elle part. Et ensuite, on a un petit peu parlé de comment améliorer le système. On sait qu'en Europe, il y a des fonds qui sont disponibles. Il y a des fonds qui sont disponibles dans le plan de relance, il y a des fonds qui sont disponibles, les fonds de cohésion. Il y a l'argent privé aussi qui est extrêmement important. Et l'enjeu, il est de inciter les acteurs publics, privés, institutionnels à orienter l'épargne, l'argent disponible vers le financement de ces scale-up. On sait que dans ce cadre-là, les acteurs publics ont un rôle très important à jouer, puisqu'ils peuvent dérisquer et permettre aux acteurs privés de prendre moins de risques, mais d'y aller quand même, et de s'habituer à aller vers ça, et de faire mûrir en fait un écosystème de financement privé. Ce que je veux dire, c'est que l'enjeu, il est devant nous, on a déjà commencé à faire, il y a des fonds plus importants qui se créent, c'est des fonds souvent qui ont besoin d'être multi-États. Il y a une annonce récente qui a été mentionnée, qui est le European Tech Champion Initiative, qui a été lancé il y a quelques mois, qui permet d'avoir des fonds de taille critique permettant d'aller sur des tickets très importants et de continuer à investir en Europe. Et puis, donc, il y a ce sujet des financements. Et puis, pour ce qui est de l'orientation des fonds et puis de l'accès au capital pour les entreprises, il y a tout un tas de sujets dont on a parlé ce matin autour de la réglementation et des incitations fiscales permettant de faciliter l'investissement des citoyens, de faciliter les introductions en bourse, d'aller plutôt vers le capital risque plutôt que vers les prêts, et de créer finalement un marché européen du capital permettant d'atteindre une taille critique. Donc il y a un certain nombre de choses qui sont en réflexion au niveau européen, par exemple, pour faciliter l'introduction en bourse et que les fondateurs les entreprises puissent garder un certain contrôle dans la direction de leur entreprise. Et un autre point, en conclusion, même s'il y a eu beaucoup de choses qui ont été dites, c'est que finalement, au-delà de l'aspect financement pur, il y a un besoin d'accompagnement pour naviguer dans le paysage européen, pour trouver les bonnes ressources au bon moment, parce que parfois elles existent, mais ce n'est pas simple pour les entreprises de les trouver. Et donc il y a aussi ce sujet, on y revient, d'écosystème local, efficace, connecté, permettant aux entrepreneurs de trouver les bonnes ressources à côté de chez eux, mais aussi un petit peu partout en Europe. Et juste un tout dernier point qui nous semblait important, c'est aussi de travailler sur le sentiment finalement d'appartenance, l'enjeu de lien entre les entreprises et le territoire, qui permettent aussi d'ancrer sur le long terme des entreprises et permettent aussi aux citoyens locaux de s'investir et peut-être même d'investir directement dans les entreprises de leur territoire.
Olivier, that was quite a comprehensive overview, but I think even an acknowledgement within the finance workshop that it's not only access to finance that's the issue. We're going to hear now, I think, from Professor Pierre-Emmanuel Moyse from McGill University about the focus on intellectual property and the links between that and breakthrough innovation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our panel was dedicated to regulation and innovation. Keynotes under the skilled whip of Patrick Duvaux, first presented in a summary fashion. Intellectual property tools, regulatory tools available to inventors and creators, including patents, copyright, database protection, and other more recent initiatives like the European Data Acts and trade secrets and fair competition. So two very open-ended questions were put to the panelists. The first one, is the intellectual property an incentive or an obstacle to innovation? So the consensus seems to be that intellectual property is still pivotal, at least for some industries. The vaccine and drugs pharmaceutical industry was mentioned. Challenged but not defeated. IP remains a viable option for innovators. IP is not absolute. Balancing mechanisms exist for essential patents, for example. It is one, but many ways the state can contribute to the innovation ecosystem. Interestingly, panelists reminded us that the intervention of the state is often overlooked. It is important, especially to build infrastructure. It is key for private enterprises to be able to rely on a solid infrastructure which is under the control of the state. So the public, there's a role for public innovation, and the state is there considered an enabler. Overall, the awareness and education in terms of IP is key for innovators, both in terms of showing the potential and limitations of IP. The panelists noted that the complexity of filing system, mostly for patent, is a major obstacle, together with the increased number of applications in certain fields, including telecom and digital software field. Examples were mentioned. Smartphones, for example, are composed of technologies representing more than 200,000 patents. Any of them likely to be, a good number of them likely to be invalid. Open source and alternative protection mechanisms were also mentioned and discussed. Open source was presented as a child of IP, not as a foe. It constitutes a different and modern use of intellectual property for complex products. Blockchain as well also emerged as a potential competitor for norms. And interesting comments were made in relation with trade secret, a much valued tool in innovation. It was noted in particular that the movement of employees, what we call the movement of brains between firms, make it difficult to trace, control, and manage trade secret for the corporation. And the expression zombie, which I didn't know, the expression zombie employee was used to describe the situation where an employee might be in contact, might have been in contact, or may have been infected by the knowledge received from past employer, increasing the risk of litigation for the current employer. The second question was more perspective. Which disruption IP should undergo to capture or create new value? Here, panelists were reminded us that if regulation is often behind the famous law lag, it is not necessarily a bad thing. Regulation is a place where stakeholders, society at large, users, right holders meet. It is difficult to future-proof regulation, but it remains necessary to bring security and create safeguards for the market. Law itself is a place of innovation. Panelist mentions a regulatory sandbox or experiments which helps producing better norms, more efficient norms, and increase acceptability. Technology creates unexpected and undesired consequences. It is almost impossible, for example, to destroy a counterfeited product on the blockchain. The sentiment that regulation is pivotal was echoed by many panelists. In fact, according to some, regulation should not be disruptive. It should be the stable sign for the market, a point of reference against which innovation can strive. The notion of technology-neutral legislation was also mentioned. For some of our panelists, and that was more in terms of prediction, artificial intelligence will disrupt the patent system. Patent examination is predictable. It was mentioned that AI could be used for drafting of preliminary patent, which could be therefore automated. Computable contracts, machine-to-machine negotiation, agreement over the dealing of large amount of diverse data will be the future. Human assessment create transaction cost, and high-scaled machines might be able to communicate better between them at a lower and more efficient way. Finally, patent pooling was mentioned as a co-petition mechanism, competition and collaboration mechanism, sharing while retaining IP, necessary evil under surveillance of competition regulators. The question of price, to have access to such a pooled license, a pooled bundle of patents at a reasonable price was also raised and discussed. $15 US, I mentioned in my notes, was mentioned as a price for digital technology on board a modern car, access to the license that would give the bouquet of all the technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next workshop was on research excellence and the creation, development and retention of talents. Chiara Aprea from the European Commission. Chiara, did you talk a lot about the brain drain, or what was the discussion?
Yes, good afternoon. So our discussion started with a snapshot of the European situation when it comes to talent. So the situation is encouraging, meaning that the share of researchers in Europe is increasing, and this is a good news. But at the same time, member states perform differently, and also within member states there are differences at regional level. And the discussion did not focus on the brain drain, but actually on the need that is emerging to have entrepreneurial skills also among research. So to work also at universities, in universities, and at regional and local level, to boost entrepreneurial skills among researchers. And we heard very good practices in France and here. So in Paris-Saclay, France, the research infrastructures is very well developed and helps creating bridges between universities and spin-offs and industries, so to foster this link from academic to industries. And also here in Paris-Saclay, we have a really good practice in Central Supélec. They are investing in accelerators and incubators, because statistics show that 70% of researchers believe that their research could become a business, but 20% feels encouraged to then really start a business. And so we talked a lot about bridges, how universities can be bridges, how the European Union can help build these bridges, because a big need that emerged from all the panelists is the need for talent. Of course, the need to access, to retain talent, but also the need to be very connected, so that the universities, so higher education institutions are connected with regional and local authorities, because the solutions cannot be only centralized, but needs to be implemented at local level. So it's important to ask the right questions. So there is no one-size-fits-all, but local implementations. So there are also at European level different attempts to bridge this need and boost entrepreneurial skills among researchers and create connection. One is the knowledge innovation community, so that brings together industries and higher education universities, and of course the thinking that the European Union is doing about a renewed innovation agenda, also to tackle this challenge about talent. Thank you.
And I know, of course, the theme we're talking about at this WIRE is regions, so it's good that you highlighted that. Our last workshop is the workshop on social acceptance of breakthrough innovation. It's what we were speaking about just before we broke up here in the plenary. Eric Cassan from here at the Université Saclay Paris, tell us a little bit what you were discussing.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, so we had this workshop 4, which was very stimulating and very interesting, about social acceptance of breakthrough innovation. So innovation was presented yesterday thoroughly and in a very detailed fashion. And this workshop was perhaps a bit different from the previous ones, because indeed innovation was not to be understood only in the meaning of technological innovation. Okay? It was also a matter of societal acceptance, social acceptance. So in fact, some of the, so we had 3 speakers during this workshop, and it was a matter of societal innovation coupled with innovation in the meaning of development of the economic activity, both with an interplay, between the two dimensions. So innovation is also a matter of innovation of uses, and it depends on the kind of society you want to realize altogether at the European scale. And the focus was to show that cultural and educative dimensions are also very important to be enablers of changes within the society. And the main focus was about food and nutrition. So the 3 speakers have focused their presentations and their introductions on that topic, food and nutrition. So we had Antoine Hubert, CEO of the society INSACT, which has around 300 employees. We had Valérie Nicolas Aymar, who is professor at Paris-Saclay University in management, and we had also Philippe Lemanceau, who is the vice president of Dijon Métropole in France, in the east part of France, in charge of food transition. So the INSACT, or Antoine Hubert from INSACT company, described the efforts of the company to develop innovative solutions based on the use of INSACT for food nutrition. And he described also very interesting matter of facts related to the cultural habits of the inhabitants of the different countries. There were statistics about, for example, the acceptance of American citizens and European citizens with respect to the use of insects before the first time, after the first time they eat it, insects and whatever. And it pointed out that indeed innovation is when it needs to engage the citizens is also a matter of culture. So definitely it was absolutely clear and very interesting. So the purpose, of course, is to provide sustainable food, so including insects, but mainly insects, as a source of alternative solution for to animal proteins and whatever. Okay, after we had the talk of Professor Valérie Nicolas Aymar, she pointed out on the same topics of the related to insects, some key specific differences between Western countries and Asian countries, and so on and so forth, and the efforts that need to be done in terms of management, I would say, presentation of the productions and whatever, to show, to boost the acceptability, the acceptance of the society with respect to that kind of food. And in a kind of wrap-up, we had Philippe Lemanceau, so from Dijon Métropole. In fact, he enlarged a bit the discussion because it was the experience that was related by Mr. Lemanceau, who is also a researcher in agroecology. It deepens the discussion much beyond the insects, the use of insects. So it is a matter of, he related a very interesting experience in Dijon Métropole, which is something like 150,000 people at least, or perhaps 200,000 people, I do not know exactly. And the idea is to make a kind of a virtual loop engaging the citizens, the NGOs, the laboratories, the researchers and so on, public and private actors in a virtual cycle in which at the local ecosystem level, food is produced, food is consumed, and there is, people are not seen, the population itself is not seen as only a set of consumers. They are also actors of what happens. They can be part of discussion within laboratories, open laboratories, so there are very stimulating and societal experiences at this level. It was also very, very interesting. So the idea indeed is to engage everyone, and also the farmers. Every actor benefits from this virtual loop, and it is made also at the benefit of the local economy. And from that kind of approach, new bridges can be opened to scale up the experiences. And it is the point perhaps where social innovation can merge and can be connected to innovation in the meaning of business development actions. So to sum up, what some key points were more or less could be more or less extracted from that. Some key conclusion could be extracted. Some key, we'd say, common elements could be extracted from the three speakers' presentations. So in order to conduct changes engaging the societal change, so the acceptance of the innovation at the level of the society, first it is needed to conduct research to evaluate the effects of what is done. It's a bit obvious, but anyway, it was absolutely clear from the speaker presentations. It is needed to inform the population and also to communicate enough and to make people be actors of what happens. Perhaps also to dissipate any misunderstandings regarding the risk or the risks or the possible risk or the risks that are felt by the population. Okay? Initiating local actions is very important also, because local actions are trustable. If there is no local action, if you do not carry out local actions, if local actions are not carried out, then the trust in what is done is much less. And from that, there is also a kind of approach merging both public and private actors, which is very powerful. And I've noticed that in what was presented by Dijon Métropole, there was something like 9 million euros of public money, but 35 million euros were given and were provided by private actors, more or less not spontaneously, probably, but after some efforts, much probably. But anyway, you see that there is a possible positive cycle between the public and the private actors in the spirit of scaling up. So mainly, it was the main conclusion. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much indeed. And you're all free and off the hook, apart from you, Olivier, who will be reporting back this afternoon.